Hi, welcome to Blantyre Chronicles. Today we're going to talk about balancing a government budget. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of a legendary Nyasaland gentleman by the name of John Chilembwe. We're going to imagine what John Chilembwe would do if he was leader of a government today. If you're new here, please subscribe, make sure to like the video, and set up notifications so you're notified each time we have a new video. Hello. In this episode of What Would JC Do? We're going to talk about government spending. Specifically, we're going to look at some simple and logical ways in which the Malawi government can take some spending, some cost out of its operating budget. And we're going to do this in a fantasy format. Basically, we're going to fantasize what John Chilembwe would do if he was president of Malawi today. Before we get started, a few disclaimers. This is an entertainment-only YouTube series. It's not meant to be political, and any resemblance and similarities to living politicians, dead politicians, existing governments, previous governments, or future governments is a mere coincidence. There is no real intent to equate any of those with what we're talking about today. And then finally, this series is not intended to be a form of cyber harassment for any government official, whether it be a president or a member of cabinet or a civilian individual living in the country of Malawi. It's pure entertainment, pure entertainment. So please do not take offense to anything that's talked about in this series. In 2021, the World Bank Development Indicator rankings were released that showed the poorest countries on earth based on their gross national income per capita on a purchasing power parity basis. And basically what this means is, let's define gross national income first. So gross national income is the total value of all final goods and services that are made inside of a country. And to that, you add net income that comes in from abroad. So it could be income that's coming in from citizens that are living in the diaspora, and also any loans or debt financing or grants that are coming from foreign governments. So if you take all of that, add it all together, it represents the gross national income that's available to a country in a year. And then to get to the per capita number, you take that sum of income and you divide it by the number of people that are living inside the country's borders. And basically what you're saying then is the per capita number is the income that could be given to each individual in a specific country to live on for a full year. So for Malawi, that would be $1,610 to every individual. And we're number 10 on the list of the poorest. The poor of the poor is Burundi, ranked number 1 with only $780 for somebody to live with from 1st of January in a year to December 31st in that particular year. So really shows you how poor these bottom 10 countries are from that perspective. And so when you look at it in this context, it does not make any sense for a government that is characterized by this level of GNI per capita to have a cabinet that has 31 members in it, whether it's full ministers or it's junior ministers or deputy ministers or whatever you want to call them. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So here's a listing of cabinet members that we've had at some point. It may not be today, it may be last year, it might be 10 years ago, it may be 20 years ago, but just take this, for example, as a lineup of your cabinet. So 22 full-bodied ministers and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 deputy ministers. So on the full ministers, you've got defense, agriculture, education, finance, foreign affairs, gender, national unity, health, information and digitization, etc., all the way to water and sanitation. So makes sense. 22, it's still too big. You probably can cap that down to a smaller number. But let's look at deputy minister, the deputy minister of agriculture, transportation, health and education, etc., all the way to gender. Again, too many people, too much. As they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. So, thinking in terms of Malawi as a country, if you look at its level of development, the poverty and the economic stability, it does not need a cabinet of 31 people or 32 people. That is too big a cabinet to have. It's inefficient, ineffective, and too big. You have enough people in the cabinet to fill almost 3 football teams. That is too much. Meetings take too long, and consensus is very hard to get because there's too many people to get to that level of agreement that's needed to move the country forward. As they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. A cabinet of this size is also very expensive for a poor country like Malawi. Just imagine 32 cabinet ministers. Each one of them is going to need housing. With housing comes a whole bunch of utility bills that have to be paid for by the government. And what about the workers that support those houses? Indoor workers, outdoor workers, drivers, cooks, security, you name it. Then you get into transportation. Each one of these cabinet members needs a vehicle. Not one, several vehicles. And these are expensive vehicles. They could be Mercedes-Benzes, they could be Land Cruisers, they could be whatever you name it. They need those cars, they need drivers, and those cars consume a lot of fuel that's paid for by the government. And those cars deserve and need constant maintenance as well. What about the food? They have to eat at some point, right? And the travel allowances, whether it's by road, by air, by train, by boat, whatever. There's allowances that have to be paid to the ministers and their entourage. It's very, very expensive, totally unnecessary. And there's so many ministries that are overlapping that it just doesn't even make any sense why you have them as separate ministries. Take, for instance, the Ministry of Land is separate from the Ministry of Agriculture. Well, in Malawi's case, you can't have agriculture without land, right? Because most of the agriculture happens on land. So therefore, it makes sense to have those two potentially be one ministry. And also natural resources. Just think of it. Land is a natural resource. Water is a natural resource. Air is a natural resource. Why would you have 3 separate ministries? Land, then agriculture, then natural resources. Why couldn't you just consolidate them into one solid ministry? So basic, simple ideas that can take this cabinet size to 14. And I'm going to walk you through how you get to the 14. Stand by. First of all, let's start with an evaluation of the deputy minister portfolios. Let's start with agriculture, transportation, and health. As long as you have a full minister in each one of these portfolios, you don't need a deputy. In my view, you only need a deputy if the ministry is so complicated that one person can't be expected to lead those particular ministries, which is not the case with Malawi. Also, if it's too complicated for the full minister to handle, then maybe they don't need to be in the cabinet. Bring somebody else that can do it on their own. So in my view, all these 3 deputy minister portfolios would be irrelevant, gone, out. Deputy Ministers of Education, Local Government, Lands. Yeah, don't need them. Gone out. And finally, let's evaluate the Deputy Minister portfolios for water and sanitation, gender, and defense. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, they're out. Don't need them. And if you've been paying attention, that's 9 Deputy Minister portfolios that we've said we don't need, which cuts our cabinet down to only 22. Yeah, woohoo, yeah. Then we start looking at the full ministers and taking the same mindset of, okay, does this make sense? Can we consolidate? So firstly, Minister of National Unity. What the heck is that? Looking at different cabinets from across the world, there was only one country where I was able to find a minister with that type of portfolio, and that was in Rwanda. And we know why they had that. We know why they had that. I don't think we need it in Malawi. That's just additional resources that are being thrown to waste for no reason at all. And then finally, consolidate ministries that have similarities, interdependencies, etc., until we get to the final 14. So on the next page, I'm going to reveal what JC's final cabinet of 14 would be. And I want you, the listeners, the viewers, to tell me which ones you would keep and which ones you would throw out on the cabinet that I've assembled. So the final cabinet size of 14 is going to be as follows: a Minister of Defense, a Minister of Agriculture, Land and Natural Resources, Minister of Education, a Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, a Minister of Foreign Affairs, a Minister of Gender, Youth and Sports, a Minister of Tourism, Culture and Wildlife, a Minister of Health, Water and Sanitation. Again, everything fits together, right? Health, if you don't have clean water, guess what happens to your health? If you don't have clean sanitation or good sanitation, what happens to your health? So all those three work together nicely. Justice as a separate ministry, labor, trade and industry as one, public works as another, then local government and home affairs. 13 would be energy and mining. And then 14 would be information. That is the ideal size of a cabinet for a country that is ranked number 10 from the bottom when it comes to GNI, or gross national income per capita. That's where you need to be. Not 30, not 32, not 35, not 40. 14 is what you need. All right, so if you disagree with me, please say so in your comments to this video. Tell me what ministries you would have kept, which ones you would have taken out, and why. Let's have a debate. Again, this is a fantasy series, not meant to be serious. It's just meant to be entertainment. Hopefully, I was able to entertain you. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, send us your comments.